In my many years being an IT and cybersecurity professional, I have serviced hundreds of different small businesses and medium-sized businesses that have made very costly mistakes because they weren't thinking about things from day zero. And these can range from people that are just one single person operations all the way up to operations of a couple hundred. And I have a list that I'm going to be going through over time, but I want to talk about the things that you should be looking at, even if you're bootstrapping right now, very inexpensively out the gate on day zero to protect your individual self as well as your business. But first, we're going to be talking about how to protect yourself with DeleteMe. In cybersecurity, it's no secret that your information may potentially be on hundreds of different websites, data brokers, and databases out there. And often those databases and such may be compromised, having your information leaked, like the recent national public data breach with 2.9 billion records affecting hundreds of millions of people that had their physical addresses, social security numbers, phone numbers, and other sensitive information revealed. So that information can be requested to be removed, but there's hundreds of different sites. Opt-out guides out there often show how tedious and time-consuming it is, plus you have to redo that opt-out every so often. DeleteMe has a very powerful automated service that I have been trusting for more than a decade that takes care of this process for me and many of the people that I've worked with, and you can check them out below in the link that I have in my description and get yourself a little bit of a discount while you're at it too. Before we get too deep into this video, let's make this very clear that this is a high-level video that's not going to get too technical, that's meant to plant seeds for people that are either starting or wanting to start a business, possibly expanding a business, so that they can have their eyes open into what things you should be considering to properly run, manage, and secure your business. And also, don't think that just because a lot of these things may be over your head, that, oh no, I gotta go hire a full-time IT or cybersecurity personnel. I would not really recommend that until you have at least 50 people internally. What you can do is you can hire an MSP, managed service provider, or an MSSP, a managed security service provider, to offset or augment that, so that while you grow to have internal staff to manage a lot of the day-to-day things, you don't have to go out and expense too much on employees to manage all of these systems. And once you grow into a SME, small to medium enterprise, is when you should consider having more internal resources, but you can still augment or offset those resources with MSPs and MSSPs. So keep that in mind as we go deeper into this video. I've written a list out here of many different things that businesses and content creators should consider to protect their business that they are conducting, but not everything on this list is going to be discussed today, because some of these items here are more for when you start maturing your business, not really as important when you're starting out the gate. Like, you don't need to worry as much about zero trust network access, or probably about your hardware firewall, or privileged access management. But quite a few of these things are very important to consider on day zero of when you're forming your business. And that starts, of course, with forming the actual business entity. I see a lot of people skip this step and go straight to doing a business. And in some cases, that's okay, but you're running it under your individual self. Whereas if you incorporate in a LLC or limited liability corporation, or in some cases a C Corp or S Corp may be more advantageous. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a cybersecurity expert, so these questions are more specifically better to be asked by an attorney. But by having an entity set up, you can separate the liability from yourself, that if anything happens, they can't personally go after you. Now, it's very important that once you actually establish this entity, that you separate your business expenses from your personal expenses. That also means having separate bank accounts and everything like that. But the advantage of having a corporate identity is that then you can open yourself up to having access to a lot of business grade products, because a couple of the things I may be discussing won't even be able to be implemented unless you at least have an LLC or such, as that's what I even use for some of my home lab products. So right out the gate, the very first thing you should consider after you've incorporated is also considering getting yourself a P.O. box or a mailbox at like a UPS, a FedEx, or something like that. You can get a virtual mailbox as well, but you don't want to attach your address to that, because I don't need to explain that people having your actual address on the internet is not always a good thing. Now, in addition to that, you shouldn't be using your personal email address. You need to start having these separations. But hold up, don't go out and just create a free Gmail or something like that. That is a huge issue and can also create additional liabilities down the road that we will discuss as well. So when it comes to your digital footprint, the very first things you're going to consider are one of these two things, or perhaps them both at the same time. Your domain name, that .com, that .net, that URL you're going to redirect everyone to, especially if you're going to be doing a link tree. You want to have a nice fancy one like I do with links.chiefgeek3d.com, which you can check out in the bio. But very often, people will just consider, I just need an email address. I'm just going to go for the free Gmail or Outlook, or I really hope you didn't even consider this, AOL.com or Yahoo.com email. Why you shouldn't be doing those, especially in a business, is there's many different reasons. Because one, if issues arise with that actual email address and they get compromised, you have less recourse to potentially recover them. Whereas if you have your own branded email address, there are ways to potentially recover it, while they're a hassle with TXT records and such as that. But we're not going to get into that route right now. The other thing is that you need to think more importantly of brand perception and awareness. When you are conducting business as your brand, how is it going to be perceived when all of your correspondence is through a Gmail, an Outlook, or such as that? Not only that, when you want to scale your business to be beyond just you as a person, and I know a lot of you are thinking, it's only ever gonna be me. Look, I thought it was only ever gonna be me when it came to my, content creation thing, but I'm already, having a guy do my clips, and I'm already considering what's gonna happen when we have to start editing footage if this actually becomes enough of a proper enterprise, or if I'm gonna need graphic designers, things like that. I need a way to manage and control all the access to all those accounts and the assets thereof. And that is why most, if not all, businesses are either using Office 365 or Google Workspace, which we're going to be talking about both and the nuances and opinions that I have with both systems in a little bit. But either way, you need to get a branded email through your .com, .net, or whatever TLD that you decide to go with. And how you do that first is, of course, you have to buy a domain name. Now, I know you're thinking probably, I'm going to go to GoDaddy and I'm just going to buy that. Don't bother with them. They're overpriced. They overcharge on everything out there. And even their own Office 365 email offering is overcharging for what you can get straight from Microsoft. And there's other caveats when you go to scale your business on managing the Microsoft tenant with them. Trust me, if you go to work with a professional managed service provider to run your business, they will give you the whole, riot act on why we don't want to do that. So what you should be doing is considering buying your domain through Cloudflare, or at the very least Pork Bun. I am not affiliated with either one of these sites, but I personally recommend Cloudflare. That's what I always, point people to, and many cybersecurity people will as well. And it opens you up to other, fancy features that you can eventually add, like zero trust network access and the warp features and all that, which we're not going to get into in this video. But needless to say, Cloudflare, really great, and it only costs you about $10 or so per year per domain, as that was the cost when I renewed my domain last. Now, there are, of course, when you go to sign up, it's going to have you sign up for different Cloudflare plans. There is a free plan if you look at the bottom, and that is what you can go. So Cloudflare itself can be free, but as you scale up, you may want to consider their Pro, Business, Enterprise, or such plans that fits your business criteria, because they have a lot of features like denial of service mitigations, anti-bot services, and there's a lot of great things with Cloudflare that it honestly warrants its own video. So go buy a domain, and now we're going to go set up your professional business email, and I'm going to talk about the two differences that I personally see having managed both Google Workspace as well as Microsoft Office 365. So I know I made it seem like there's only really two solutions for business grade email, which is Microsoft Office 365 and Google Workspace, but there is also a third option for people that are maybe more privacy minded, and that is from Proton Proton. I am affiliated with them. They have a great product, but the honest truth is they don't integrate well or at all with many different business products that may need either a Google Workspace or a Microsoft Office 365 environment to get the full capability of it. But if you're just looking at an email with collaboration tools, it is a great solution. It also provides a VPN, and you get, I think, about 500 gigabytes of storage to collaborate amongst different people per user. You can affix many different domains to it. It has a lot of security features like simplelogin.io for privacy, as well as, making sure you're not reusing a lot of emails. Plus, you get the Proton Password Manager in there as well. We'll talk about password managers in a little bit, but overall, when it comes to business, over the many years I've been doing it, I've recommended people to go to Google Workspace and Microsoft Office 365, and personally, I lean more towards the Microsoft Office 365. Yes, I know, as a Linux user that daily drives Linux, I know, how could I commit such a sin? But the reality is Microsoft Office 365 has probably the better environment for businesses, especially in a compliance, setting. So if you're needing to make sure your business is compliant with certain things like HIPAA, high-tech, GDPR, all of that, they have integrated tools like Purview. Now, Google has some tools, but they're honestly nowhere near the capability of what Microsoft has. Plus, Microsoft has some amazing features for Office 365 in terms of collaboration and all of that. And I know that a lot of people may have some gripes with it, but here's how I honestly like to explain to people. Google Workspace is a consumer product with some business features slapped on top of it, whereas Microsoft Office 365 is designed for businesses. And I know a lot of IT professionals will agree with me that Office 365 is the better choice. There might be some people that say Google Workspace, but honestly, in all the years I've been dealing with both environments, and I've dealt with both for hundreds of different clients, Office 365 still gets my affection. Now, if you are a Linux user, you can use a Bayonex plugin for Thunderbird to get your emails pulled in, that it'll still work with the whole Office environment, and it even works with your identity and access management platform if that is of a requirement for you. But Microsoft also has a better identity and access management system, plus Intune and all these other features with the Microsoft 365 environment. We're not going to get too deep into that side of thing, but needless to say, Microsoft 365, in my opinion, is a lot more scalable, especially as your business grows with the features it has, the ability to manage it, and it feels like you're also getting a lot less nickel and diming when you use the 365 environment than you will with Google. Plus, Google, in my experience, has a tendency to create bad user habits and it just it's not conducive to a proper business workflow in my experience. I mean, I'm not saying it can be, but it takes a lot more work to get where you should be, in my opinion. As of recording this video, both Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace have really great business packages that start as little as $6 per user per month, but you're going to see that the value of these products wildly differs in different packages. And just to be clear with Microsoft 365, because it can get a little confusing, we're talking about the 4 business plan. They have a 4 home plan. You don't want to click that for your business, obviously. So let's get into talking about the differences in the different plans and the values that each of them can bring. So let's begin by comparing the beginner tiers, then we'll go to the intermediate and the, more expensive tiers. And again, this isn't the enterprise plans. Enterprise, whole other world of features and things like that. With Microsoft 365 Business Basic at $6 per user per month, you get identity access and user management for up to 300 employees. What this means is that you can not have to worry about needing to go out and buy Okta, Duo, or JumpCloud, or another identity access management platform to manage all of your users if you don't want to. All of those have their own amazing feature sets, which we're not going to get too much into. Just know that this is at least included at this package level, whereas with Google, in my experience, you kind of need to go jump out and get those. We'll get in that in a second. Of course, you get your custom business email, which is the whole reason we're talking about this. The you@yourbusiness.com. That's the appeal, your brand appeal. Both Google and Microsoft do this at the basic level. That's mainly why we're doing this. You get the web and mobile versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. So you can at least modify them inside the web browser, similar to, what Google, of course, is well known for with Google Docs and everything like that. You get chat, call, and video conference with Microsoft Teams. I know some of you are complaining, Microsoft Teams. The honest truth is if we're talking about at only a $6 per user per month collaboration tool, this is included, whereas a lot of people are going to go out and get Slack. And I know you're probably saying, well, the free version is more than enough. Here's the problem. You want to do proper identity and access management, you have to pay for like the $15 per user per month plan on Slack so that you can then control it through SAML for proper IAM federation so that you can manage it as you scale your business. I know this because I do this to talk on a few Slack servers with my friends. It's an expensive proposition to get the nice chat environment that you're probably going to want. Yes, Teams has its, gripes, but in terms of compliance and collaboration, especially bang for the buck value, it still wins in my book. And I say that as a Linux user, just to make that clear. You get 1 terabyte of cloud storage per employee, only at the $6 plan. That's a lot of data for only $6. You get 10 plus additional apps for your business needs. That's Microsoft Bookings, which is the equivalent to like Calendly. That's included in there. You don't necessarily have to worry about going out and getting a subscription for something else. Now, of course, some people have complaints with Bookings, but it's there as a free part of the $6 a month basic plan. You also get Planner, Forms, and a few other apps. There are some very useful, powerful apps out the box. You also get automatic spam and malware filtering. It actually works pretty well, in my opinion, compared to Google at the basic plan. Of course, there's additional email security that you can add on top of it very inexpensively, which we'll talk about in a little bit later after we get through this email section. You also, of course, get anytime phone and web support, and in my experience, Microsoft actually does a pretty great job, even at the basic plan, to fix different problems. They're not, of course, going to do the work for you unless you find a bug, but they can help you guide through the solution, and they can either be through phone or web like they're talking about, and they do a pretty good job in my experience. But remember, Microsoft won't ever contact you without you contacting them first, and always verify anyone is legitimately from Microsoft when you're dealing with them. You can contact them through the portal and all that. They also have the Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is available as an add-on. There's quite a few things in here. You also get not only Teams, you get OneDrive, you get SharePoint, and of course the Exchange email service, which this is powered by. And SharePoint is a nice tool in and of itself so that you can actually have internal resources shared. Google Drive, in my experience, just like OneDrive, basically downloads everything off of the folder onto your machine, whereas SharePoint, you can control it and then basically set up sync libraries that only download files when they're called upon. So it's a lot more scalable and data friendly, so it doesn't eat up your whole hard drive in my experience. So with that being said, we can move on to the Google Business Starter Plan for Google Workspace. So $6 per user per month, just like, Microsoft is. No difference in price really there. The real difference is that you only get 30 gigabytes of pooled storage per user. That's your emails, that's your data, everything in that account, 30 gigabytes. Microsoft gives you 1 terabyte. Big difference. And in my experience, also, Microsoft 365 gives you 50 gigabytes per email account, not just the 1 terabyte. And the other nice thing is that Microsoft 365, I didn't get into this, with your shared inboxes, you can have shared accounts that can then tie to different licensed users that have their own, like say you have an info@yourcompany.com. Those don't cost an additional price, and they have 50 gigabytes of space, plus I think an additional 50 gigabytes of archive. There's a lot of value in Microsoft 365. And again, you get the custom business email, 100 participant video meetings. You get some security and management controls, but it leaves a lot to be desired in my experience having administered things. And you get standard support. So that's the business tier that's at the basic level. And then we're going to go on to the next level for both Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. Now, at the next levels of Microsoft 365 Business as well as Google Workspace, I see with Microsoft 365 Business Standard at $12.50 per user per month. The main selling point here is that you get the desktop versions of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook, which I find in a business setting, Outlook is a really great tool. Don't get me wrong. I know some people like, ugh, Outlook, but you have to understand, for everything that it does, as well as with shared mailbox integration, it works really well. You can get Mozilla Thunderbird to work with Microsoft Office 365, but you're going to have to buy another plugin from Bayonex, which works pretty well. It's only a few dollars per year, but that's an additional cost, as well as it's kind of a pain to manage at scale with different users. But you can mix and match, licensing as I talked about. So if some people prefer desktop versions of the apps, that's only just a click away in the admin portal for them. You also get, the ability with webinars with attendee registration and reporting. And you get collaborative workspaces to co-create using Microsoft Loop. Honestly, I'm more of a fan of Atlassian, Confluence, Jira, and that for, collaborating in different workspaces. And some people will use Notion, but, Notion is kind of a nice platform too. I use it too, but there's a whole other talking discussion we have to have when we're comparing those products, but just want you to know that it is at least included in this package. The other thing is that you get video editing and design tools with Microsoft Clipchamp, which the interesting thing with Clipchamp is that my editor apparently is using Clipchamp to get my TikTok and YouTube short videos from my videos. So do what you will with that information. So far, seems to be working pretty well for us. They also have, again, the Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is available as an add-on, just like in the prior version. And, of course, when we go over to the Google offerings, we now have the upgrade of $12 per user per month, so only 50 cents less. 2 terabytes of pooled storage per user. So you have to pay for the $12 per user per month plan to get any usable amount of storage to share a large amount of content. And at this point, yes, you do get more data. You get, of course, the email. You get now from 100 to 150 participant video meetings. And now you get recording and noise cancellation, which, if I'm not mistaken, was a feature in the basic version of Microsoft Office 365. You get now the ability to do appointment booking pages, which was, again, a feature at the basic $6 plan with Microsoft. You get some security and management controls just like in the prior, and some standard support. That's what you get for around the $12 middle-of-the-road pricing for both of these. Now we're going to talk about the top-tier plans for Microsoft 365 as well as Google Workspace. And generally, a lot of people just starting out don't need this, but as you start scaling up, having devices deployed that need to be managed, and you're worried about compliance requirements and enhancing your cybersecurity posture, this is where you're going to start moving into these plans before you start having to move into enterprise plans, usually by the number of users that you have in your environment. As I mentioned, more than 300 users then requires enterprise licensing. So with Microsoft 365 Business Premium, you get $22 per user per month, everything in the prior 2 plans. You get advanced identity and access management. We'll talk about that in a sec as when I, give the summary. Enhanced cyber threat protection against viruses and phishing attacks. Enterprise-grade device and endpoint protection. Discover, classify, and protect sensitive information. And of course, again, Microsoft 365 is available as an add-on. So what does this all mean, Basil? Well, basically, you get all those features, but you get this nice thing called Intune, which allows you to control your device endpoints. And this can also work for Mac and other devices too, so that you can have central control with identity and access management to make sure that devices have certain policies applied to make sure that they're compliant, as well as e-discovery, which is a very important thing when it comes to legal things. You do have retention holds and things like that for litigation and such as that with the prior versions, if I'm not mistaken, but you get a much better engine for catching phishing and viruses out there, although in my opinion, you still should enhance that with another email security solution. Again, we will talk about that afterwards, but this is the point I would make whether you're using Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, in my opinion. Now, you get a lot of features inside of that, as well as Microsoft Purview, which allows you to see what things are being checked off in terms of compliance. So Microsoft 365 really shines when it comes to getting your products secured as well as your company compliant month with different things. Now, at the top end of Google Workspace, yes, it's a little bit cheaper at $18 per user per month. You get 5 terabytes of pooled storage per user. So again, you get more user space, but you also get the additional e-discovery and retention, which is a really important feature for compliance and things like that. You get 500 participant video meetings, recordings, attendance tracking, and noise cancellation. You get the appointment booking pages. I don't know why they don't lay this out to be a lot easier to read in general. The other thing is enhanced security and management controls, including Vault and advanced endpoint management. So you start getting endpoint management and things like that, but in my experience, it's not nearly as incorporated into, like the operating system and all that as Microsoft's product is. I have to say Intune works pretty well, and from my understanding, it even works on Linux, so I'm eventually going to be tinkering with that in my home lab as well as in some different businesses that I still actively tinker with today. They both have products that can fit different needs, but the honest truth is that you need to get the enterprise plan of Google to get a lot of the features that Microsoft has. But even then, a lot of the things like DLP, data leak prevention or data loss prevention, and, data regions and things like that, those all come in the Microsoft 365 plans even before you go to enterprise. But again, you can enhance that with additional security packages that I'm going to be talking about right now. The next important thing when it comes to after you get your email set up for your small business is that you're going to want to think about how you are managing all of your passwords. I have fortunately made a whole other video that you can go watch, which talks about the different password managers I have used and recommended for personal and business uses, as well as the different types of multi-factor authentication and the 4 types of authentication, which is something you know, something you are, something you have, and somewhere you are. Those are important to know, and you need to understand those products as well so that you can better manage all of your credentials. And things like Bitwarden and Jump Cloud and all that allow you to share credentials amongst different users based on their roles, and that goes into identity and access management, which we'll talk about in a later video, because this is just you're starting out in your business, not when you're more maturing your business. We'll talk about role-based access controls and things like that in another separate video, which I hope to have coming out pretty recently for you. So now that you've gotten your business grade communication and collaboration platform out of the way, now is the time that you need to decide how are you going to protect the devices that are running inside your business, especially if you're choosing to deploy devices in your business that employees are going to use, as well as how are you going to further protect your email and collaboration systems. So we'll first talk about the endpoints here. So when it comes to things like that, you might be thinking you need an antivirus. Well, you're going to need actually a little bit more than just a basic antivirus. This is where EDRs and XDRs, endpoint detection and response, or extended detection and response applications come into play. And what these can do is help you map out some visibility, investigation, and response across the cyber attack chain. And these may often be managed by your IT team if you decide to have one, or if you decide to actually go hire a managed service provider or a managed security service provider to manage this for you, which for a lot of small businesses is the better cost-effective approach than having an internal IT team. But these solutions are going to be like Microsoft Defender XDR, which is an enhanced version of Microsoft Defender, because the basic Defender, while it's okay for the average everyday user, when you're in a business, you need a little bit more than that, because it can actually map out the entire cyber attack chain if you have a phishing email or such as that. Other XDRs include, you have Bitdefender Gravity Zone, there's even Sentinel-1, and CrowdStrike. Yes, I know they got some bad rap in the news when it came recently to they crashed a few systems, but the honest truth is that's the unfortunate consequence with a lot of these systems, is that I remember when McAfee a decade ago shut down and, deleted System 32 from some machines and everything. That's unfortunately one thing that can happen, and having worked with CrowdStrike, I think they've really learned their lessons, and they're allowing better control of the file channel releases and things like that. They've taken their lickings, and I think they are going to come out better for it in the coming months. I still would have to say that I do recommend them. with that being said, you're going to need some kind of a endpoint prevention solution or to protect your device so that you can actually lock down the devices as well as have better visibility into when machines are being attacked, especially if you're in a business and industry that requires a lot of compliance. Now, these have different prices and all of that goes into it. I'm not going to get too much into that because a lot of these licensings can get a little bit nitty-gritty. It's best for you to deal with your MSP, MSSP, or IT or cybersecurity team to manage that for you. In addition to your XDR, EDR solutions with your cybersecurity, IT, MSP, or MSSP that is handling that product, you should also be looking into how you further enhance the security and possibly DLP, data leak prevention, of your communication and collaboration platforms. And of course, when it comes to email security, Proofpoint and Mimecast come to mind, but they're kind of an expensive product, especially if you're in a smaller company, though they do have some better offerings. One product that I have actually used in particular that I've actually liked for a couple of years, and it's very cost effective, is Avanan. And the thing I like about Avanan is it can work with Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, and it does it as an API, so you don't have to set up an additional email gateway, but you can also use Avanan as another defense on top of Proofpoint and Mimecast if you really want to. Although I know Proofpoint has another similar product that they acquired called Teshian, I think it's called, but Avanan is a really cost-effective solution that also can tie into Box, Dropbox, Slack, Microsoft Teams, although with Teams you will need the Microsoft E5 licensing to my understanding, but it can also check Drive and Microsoft OneDrive as well so that you can get a full picture of any issues for malware, phishing, and all of that, and it does a really great job. I definitely recommend it, but I will say that this is in the class, just like some of those XDR products, that you're going to definitely need a business incorporation for the sales team to reach out to you for. So, with that being said, those are a lot of the basics that I recommend. Of course, we can talk further on about zero trust network access, web access firewalls, as well as, hardware firewalls. And there's a lot of things that we didn't even get into on this entire list here that I was talking about earlier. Just to name a few, we also have, the identity and access management. We have, the zero trust network access versus a VPN or virtual private network. There is a difference there. Secrets management, if you're doing application management, which is different than password management. And we didn't even get into the security trainings, such as products that, do phishing tests so that you can actually test your users, because you need continual security training to make sure that your company is not really compromised, because about 90% of cyber attacks start as a phishing email, believe it or not. That is why phishing defense is one of the most important things. So for the cost, I definitely recommend getting at least the basic Microsoft 365, or if you really want Google, the basic plan, attaching Avanan. For the price, it's a really great 1-2 punch for a lot of those different attacks. And honestly, Linus Tech Tips would have probably had a lot of his issues resolved if he had proper email security management in place, combined with zero trust network access and, principle of least privilege and all these other things that can come into play, which we will talk further about. But this video was primarily so that you, as someone that's starting a business, can at least get in the mindset of what you need to either do immediately or plan for as you build and expand your business. So I hope this was beneficial and very educational for all of you. And stay safe out there. The internet can be a scary place. Happy hacking, my friends.